Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the car guru. You may be in pain today following yesterday's stock market meltdown. I think Confucius said, "Man who in pain cannot help person who in pain." So I don't think that's really Confucius. It sounds Confucius-y, but it's probably not. The Dow took a plunge. Is this good or bad? Well, from a short-term standpoint, it's horrible. Long-term, I don't know. And it seems like it's a long-term proposition. I do believe that the stock market will zoom back up by 2,500 points within the next 30 days. My fingers are crossed, but it is a fascinating thing to watch unless you are, tied into the market. Then it's extremely frustrating and scary. So we'll try not to dwell on that today. We are going to dwell on something that I think is important. It does have to do with tariffs. Volkswagen just announced that they are going to recover the additional tariff charges from people who buy cars from them. Of course, you probably anticipated that. You would anticipate that from just anybody. If they're selling something, all of a sudden their cost goes up 25%, what are they going to do? Eat it? Probably not. They're going to test the market, they're going to jack prices, and then see what happens to the demand. Is the demand elastic or inelastic? That's something I learned in, first quarter economics at the University of Tennessee. Dr. Spivey. I forget exactly what it means, but it has to do with demand based on pricing changes. So that's what Volkswagen is going to do. How are they going to do it? They're not going to bury it in their MSRP. They're going to be very transparent. I think they're going to put like a picture of Donald Trump's face on the window sticker with a big X through it. And then right beside that, they're going to add it to the freight charge. So if there's, for example, if it was, what is it on this F-150 freight? I'm looking at it at an invoice. We're going to talk about what invoice means here in just a minute. Let's see, freight. Oh, here it is. Destination and delivery, $1,995. An interesting thing about that, people say, why don't I just go to Michigan, or, on the F-150, go to Dearborn. I've got an F-150 ordered. Go up there and pick it up, and I'll just save the delivery charge. No, you won't. Well then, okay, I'll just go to a closer dealer, one that is actually in Dearborn, a Ford dealer there, and I'll order from him, and I'll save the $19.95 delivery charge. No, you won't. It's $19.95 if they have to drive it a half a mile, or if they have to drive it to Florida. It's just the way it is. It's been negotiated, and it's added to the price. So it's an average, basically. So what Volkswagen's going to do is just take the tariff, whatever it is, and add it to that $19.95, and then hope that you'll still be willing to buy that Golf or Jetta or Atlas or whatever else they sell. So what's some of the other manufacturers doing? What's very interesting, Nissan is cutting prices. That's right. It's not just us. It's not Gateway Nissan here in Greenville, Tennessee. No. We're not necessarily cutting. We're going to take bare bones deals, that's for sure, just to keep them moving. But, yeah, Nissan is cutting prices on Rogue, which is their number one selling vehicle, and on Pathfinder. Well, how are they doing that? Well, because they're made in Smyrna, Tennessee. Nissans are made in Tennessee and Mississippi. So there's no tariff on them, on the finished product. There may be some tariff on the steel that makes them, and aluminum, and anything else that's imported. But there's no tariff on the finished product, and that saves Nissan a bunch of money so they can cut prices on two of their hottest selling vehicles. I think that's wunderbar. That's wonderful, I think, in German. I know I throw curveballs. Sometimes I speak my limited Spanish, which is, I haven't had Spanish since the 9th grade. And I'm 68 now, so that's a pretty good distance. I can still count to 100. in Spanish, and let's see what else. Oh yeah, I can read a Taco Bell menu. Okay, I'm going to take my first break, and I'll be back here in just 1 minute. Okay, let's get into some other pricing strategies. Ford has just announced a beautiful thing. And so, if you're not an insider, there's certain terminologies that you really don't know what they mean. I mean, if somebody says, I'll get you an invoice for that, what do they mean? Well, that's like a bill, right? That's like a statement, a ticket, something that you pay. I'll invoice you for it. It's a bill. Well, when dealers use that term, typically they use it as an advertising hook. Now, where I live, in the volunteer state, the state of Tennessee, you cannot say that you are having an invoice sale. You can't say that you're selling cars for $1,000 under invoice. You can't say that because invoice is not your final cost on the car. Let me explain. So basically what most consumers are familiar with are MSRP, that stands for Manufacturer's Suggested Retail Price. Some senator or congressman named Maroney, of course he may have been a Secretary of Transportation or something, I don't know, but they came up with this Monroney label. That's what they call it. That's where the manufacturer has to put a window sticker in there and has to quote the suggested retail price. Now, isn't that an interesting choice of words? Manufacturer's suggested retail price. Does that mean that that's the absolute price that you have to pay for a car? Not in the car business, it doesn't. It's just a suggestion. There's some dealers that play fast and loose, and they have these addendums. We call them addendums in the car business, but it's an extra little window sticker beside the sticker. And they put all kinds of nonsense on there. Just drive around, go into Tri-Cities here, walk around to some dealership's lot or some dealership lots, and just look around. Who has a sticker beside the sticker, and how much is added to it, and what's it for? When it says something like marketing margin, $4,000, you probably ought to leave. That's a bad sign. That's a first indication that something is awry. But so we know what MSRP is. Do we know what the invoice price is? Because a lot of dealers say that. Well, that is the original price that the manufacturer sells it to the dealership for. But it is not their ultimate cost because we have something called holdback. And it's anywhere from 1.5% on imports, can get as high as 3% on some domestics. I'm not sure. I think it's higher maybe on a lot of German cars, but who knows. So let me give you an example. MSRP on this, let's see, I'm looking at a 4x4 Super Crew XLT F-150. It's a 2024 model. The MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price, is $59,345. The invoice price is $55,653. Now, when I bought that car from Ford, not too long afterwards, they send me some money back. It's called holdback. In this particular case, it's $1,147. So before they sent me that money back, if I had sold the vehicle for MSRP, I would have made $3,692 by selling a $59,000 vehicle, which represents about a 6% profit margin. Does that sound like a lot? 6%? How about jewelers? I heard that jewelers make 100% on a lot of their stuff. I'd have to ask a jeweler. That's what I always heard anyway. True or not true? Who knows? All I know is 6% doesn't sound like much, but rarely, if ever, is a vehicle sold for MSRP, unless it's like a hybrid at a Toyota store. I mean, people go nuts buying hybrids. During the pandemic, people were having to pay MSRP or more simply because the supply was so low. and people wanted cars, so they were willing to pay that to get them. When we first started selling Broncos, all of those were MSRP. But it's not like, you were ripping somebody's arm out of socket. I mean, it was just MSRP. So, and most of those were, I'd say the average transaction price is probably around $45,000. But we do get this holdback, which allows us to sell cars a little bit cheaper. Matter of fact, we can sell vehicles for the factory invoice price, what we paid for it, and in this case, we're going to make $1,147. But that's not all. They also send us a little bit of money back to help us with our floor plan expense, which we have to pay interest on these cars. And you know how interest rates are. You think mortgage rates are high, you got to see what we have to pay. I mean, we have to pay prime rate, basically. And that's for every single car out there. The manufacturer helps us with that for about 90 days. And then it's all ours. We pay every bit of that tab. And when you've got a huge inventory in the millions and millions, that adds up every month. And then they also give us back a little bit of money to help with advertising. It's called co-op advertising. Just about every business that is a franchise has some type of co-op arrangement with their vendor to help them promote their products. It's in their best interest to help. They don't help a lot, but every little bit helps. Ours is about 1.5%, or no, 1.25%. So that helps pay for some of our advertising. Probably, I'd say a third of it. So let's simplify this. If you buy a car for invoice price, did you get a good deal? Yes, you did. Now, if you got to keep the rebate as well, which you should have, you got a great deal. Now, many times there's something called dealer cash. This is where the manufacturer, instead of incentivizing the customer through advertising and so forth to come in and buy this car and get a $3,000 rebate, they incentivize the dealer. Sell this car, and we'll give you $1,000 cash to use as you will. So that allows us, and typically that's on slow-moving merchandise. The manufacturer is trying to help us get rid of inventory. Well, why would they do that? Well, because they want us to order more. It does them no good to see this product sitting out there on dealer lots. It's not their inventory because they've already sold it to the dealer, but they are responsible by an agreement with us to help us move that inventory. But trust me, we own it. Ford does not own it. In our Nissan store, Nissan does not own it. Lenny Lawson owns it. I'm ultimately responsible to make sure that that inventory goes away. And I'll take all the help I can get. So we market the products that we sell. We market our dealership. We try to get people to want to do business with us through our advertising by creating an image of who we are. Now, it's really kind of hard to create a really good image for somebody that's a real jerk. Sometimes you can see it, right? I mean, you go onto their lot, and the image that they've tried to create on TV does not jive with what you're seeing on the lot. But when you've been in business in Greenville, well, like we have, for 54 years, your image is pretty well set. Your reputation dictates the public perception. And that can change over time. I've seen dealerships that have been in business for years and years and years, and they've done really well. They change management teams. Everything goes down the toilet because the people who own the store either aren't there anymore. They own like 50 dealerships. And so they've got independent general managers coming in and running these stores, and those general managers are held to a high standard of performance in selling cars, and they'll do just about anything they have to move that iron, as we say in the car business. And sometimes that involves false claims, false advertising. And you know why they do it? Because they don't think they're going to get caught. Because they've been doing it for 20 years and nobody's ever come knocking on their door. That's the only thing that I liked about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is they were going to bring the hammer down on car dealers, unscrupulous car dealers. And they were going to make us do some things that were really cumbersome, that didn't make sense. But the basic premise, they just went too far. The basic premise was good. Don't advertise things that you don't do or won't do. Don't say these certain things because they are blatantly deceptive and anti-consumer. Do not sell cars based on just the monthly payment. Full disclosure, that's what you have to do under the law, full disclosure. But too many dealers don't. They play games. They do something called a five-finger disclosure. You know what that is? That's when you hand the paperwork over to the customer for them to sign, but you got your hand laying over all the numbers. You got 5 fingers hiding everything. That's called a five-finger disclosure. So, okay, I wanted to get into this invoice a little bit more because Ford has decided their strategy is to cut prices across the board. The only thing that they're not offering a very special offer, and folks, this is a special offer. The only thing they're not offering it on are Super Duties, the 2025 Ford Expedition, which hasn't hit the showrooms yet, the Lincoln Navigator, and any of the Raptor products. It's not a dinosaur. It is Ford. That's the name that Ford uses for their ultra high performance off-road. They have a Raptor Bronco, a Raptor F-150. I think they have a Raptor Ranger as well. But on everything else, folks, and that's pretty much almost everything we sell, they're offering employee pricing on everything. Now, you may have heard dealerships, individuals saying employee pricing. Well, what they're talking about is they're offering the same thing that they would sell the dealership employees for. And that's several $1,000s shy of what actual retirees or current employees of the Ford Motor Company get. It's called the A plan. And for example, okay, I told you what the invoice was on this. Let me say it again. The sticker price on this F-150 was $59,345. The invoice price was $55,653. I told you that if you got a really good deal, you'd be buying a vehicle for invoice. That's a great deal. And then you would get the factory rebate. I think on the F-150 right now it's $1,000. Okay. The employee price is $2,062 less than the invoice price. And that's significantly less than I actually paid for the truck. Well, Lenny, how do you get paid? Well, the manufacturer sends me a fee, basically, for selling this vehicle. So it is a fantastic deal for the consumer. It's not a horrible deal for me. I get to sell a vehicle. I get to get another customer, get to take a nice trade-in, make a little bit of money. So I'm excited about it. It goes until June the 2nd. Now, you GM buyers, Honda buyers, Toyota buyers, what are you going to get? I don't know. I would say that General Motors will respond and offer the same thing. The reason Ford can do it is because so many of their vehicles are sold or manufactured in the United States. They do have some that are manufactured in Mexico and Canada, but they're not, at least as far as now is concerned, everybody has very good inventory, meaning that, what's sitting on the ground, there's no tariffs on it. So everything that I have in stock right now, there's no tariffs on any of that. Anything that comes in the future may or may not have tariff money added to it. If you're a Volkswagen dealer, it's going to be added to your delivery immediately. Probably not for the inventory that they have on the ground either. But that's a pretty good buying opportunity as far as I'm concerned, especially if you're in the market for a car. Now, if you're not in the market for a car, don't let this be your reason. I mean, if your car's running good, if you're upside down in your trade, you financed it 2 years ago for 84 months, I don't think it would make a whole lot of sense for you to go in and trade and take advantage of a deal where you get something for $2,000 less than the invoice, because you're going to be losing $15,000 in the process. That $15,000 is an estimate, but I've seen that a lot. So, if you're in the market or will be in the market sometime between now and, middle of summer, this is a really good deal. And like I say, I don't know if it's going to be exclusive, but, at our dealership, we do that. We also offer a lifetime powertrain warranty, which a lot of dealers don't. and we offer complimentary maintenance for 3 full years. So again, creating a brand that people can feel comfortable with, can trust, can feel like, they're not just getting a good price up front, but they're getting a long-term good deal, something that goes on and on and on. I mean, imagine having a car with 250,000 miles on it and the engine blows up and it's still under warranty. That's a pretty good deal. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I guess my main point with this broadcast is don't panic from a buying standpoint. People that are in business, they are a savvy bunch of people. They are creative. They adapt. Americans figure out how to handle obstacles that are put in their place. Yeah, there might be some people that go crawl into a corner and just sob. But most business people, people that run factories, they figure out a way to do it. They're not free to do that in a lot of countries. They're dictated what to do, and usually dictated by government officials who can't tell the difference between you-know-what and a hole in the ground. So is everything going to go up in price? I don't think so. I think they're going to figure out ways to make this happen. I think that long term, like I said, if more stuff is made here, it's better for this country. There may be a little pain in the process, but we'll figure it out. That's just what we do. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. Again, 423-552-2020 is my cell phone number. You can text me. That's the best way to get an answer. Even if you're trying to buy a car, it's a used car. Hey, say, Lenny, check his car out for me. Send me the VIN number. Tell me about what the miles are, and I'll tell you what you should pay for it. How's that for a deal? And I don't get anything out of it except good feelings for you. Send me a text, 423-552-2020, or an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com. And I'll see you next time on My Car Guru.